Hello and welcome. You're watching To The Point. Was the use of the original constitutional preamble in an advertisement just a silly, careless mistake? A justified decision? A worrying hint of what may lie ahead? Those are the three key questions that are fueling both the controversy and the debate on this issue. They're also the questions we shall address in part 2. But first, India has a new Foreign Secretary. The previous one was curtailed, to use the government's language, late last night. This morning, the news sparked angry questions from the opposition and a solid defense from the government. So in part 1, we asked, has the government taken the right decision, but perhaps in an ungracious and possibly even in an unbecoming way? Or was this messy situation simply unavoidable? With me to discuss the controversy over the handling of the Foreign Secretary's post is former Foreign Secretary Karan Thapar, the Geostrategic Director of the International Institute of Strategic Studies, Sanjay Baru, BJP spokesperson Shaina NC, and Congress spokesperson and MP Abhishek Singhvi. Sanjay Baru, late last night, the government announced that Sujata Singh has been curtailed as Foreign Secretary with immediate effect, and S Jaishankar appointed as the new Foreign Secretary. Now, you're a friend and an admirer of Mr. Jaishankar. Why do you believe he's the right person to be Foreign Secretary at this point of time?
Karan, well, it is true, Jaishankar is a personal friend, so whatever I say would be highly subjective. The fact is that this decision ought to have been taken almost a year and a half ago. I mean, Jaishankar was the most qualified person at the time when Ms. Sujata Singh was made the Foreign Secretary. As you know, there was wide speculation even at that time that he would be the person who would be made Foreign Secretary. I mean, at the end of the day, at such positions in government, experience ought to count for more than seniority. I think it's unfortunate that during UPA 2, Prime Minister Manmohan Singh chose to go by seniority, while in UPA 1, when he appointed Shyam Saran, when he appointed Shiv Shankar Menon, he did not think about seniority, he went for experience. And I don't think for such positions, one should worry too much about seniority. Okay. One should look at the merit and the experience of a gentleman officer, and Jaishankar was certainly someone with tremendous experience as the ambassador in Singapore, in China, his tenure in Japan, and his entire role during the negotiation of the civil nuclear agreement. He was an extremely capable officer, and I think this government has taken a decision which ought to have been taken by the previous government. Karan
Thapar, I'll come to Mr. Jaishankar and his brilliant track record a little later. I want first to look at some of the concerns this development has raised. Foreign secretaries, as you know, are appointed these days with a fixed 2-year tenure. Sujata Singh still had 7 months left. Was the government right to arbitrarily curtail her term without giving any explanation to the country?
Well, you know, in this case, you must remember that the orders were 2 years or until further orders. So it's not as if the condition for was simply 2 years fixed extension with no possibility of curtailing the tenure.
That was the case when Mr. Jaishankar was appointed. I'm not sure whether that phrase "until further orders" was there when Sujata Singh was appointed. It's true of Jaishankar's appointment.
I believe it was the case also. I believe it was the case also earlier. I think so. I have not seen the papers myself, but this is what I believe is the case. Now, point is, government gives itself the discretion to cut short the tenure of any officer, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to use it. And the best thing is to avoid a controversy over the appointment of the Foreign Secretary, because it has repercussions down the line on the morale of the Foreign Service. But ultimately, the government has all the powers to do what it wants. And if it feels that a change is required, it's very difficult to question that. You have to balance two things: seniority, morale of the service, and professional competence. Now, as it happens, Jaishankar is professionally very competent. So whatever the controversy generated around the early dismissal of Sujata Singh would to some extent be compensated by the fact that they have chosen somebody with recognized professional competence. And therefore, I think the damage on the whole would be somewhat mitigated.
It's interesting that you say damage would be somewhat mitigated. That clearly suggests, does it not, Mr. Sibal, that damage has been done in your eyes?
Well, obviously the dismissal of a foreign secretary, the head of the foreign service, is an important decision to take, and I'm sure the government knew that this will generate some controversy, but they thought on balance it was in the interest of the ministry and government's policies to have a change in foreign secretary, and they took the call knowing that they'll have to answer questions, which they will.
Shaina NC, no one denies for a moment that the government has the power to change foreign secretaries when the Prime Minister wishes. The question is, how was this done? First of all, the announcement happened after 10:30 p.m. at night. Secondly, could the government not have found another suitable post for the Foreign Secretary rather than sack her peremptorily?
Karan ji, let me ask you a question. Has the government done anything illegal? Has the government done anything unconstitutional? Or has the government acted in the best interest of the country?
Can I answer that?
I think Mr. Jaishankar's credentials...
Can I answer the question?
Mr. Jaishankar's credentials...
I'm not suggesting the government acted illegally. I'm asking whether it took this decision in the right way. I'm saying that it could have been done with greater discretion and more graciousness.
I am coming to that. I don't think I need to highlight the absolutely superb credentials of Mr. Jaishankar.
You don't need to. I agree with you. Come to my question instead.
Indo-US.
Come to my question instead. Let's not go on about the Indo-US deal. We know that. We've already been told that by Sanjay Baru.
But the
Answer
point
my
is,
question about the way in which this is done.
Do you want the country to move forward? Do you want the country and the government to have its own prerogative to choose the best officers to lead us into an instrumental era where we have not just relations with the United States of America, but even if one looks at his track record and what he did whilst he was in Beijing, his record as ambassador
the question I've asked you. I hate interrupting you, but I asked you a specific question, not about his credentials. They are unimpeachable. I'm asking about the way he's been, or more importantly, the way she's been replaced at 10:30 at night without offering her, I assume, another job. After all, these things can be done more graciously. It's that lack of grace I'm asking you about.
I don't think it's lack of grace. It's about the best in the country being given an opportunity. We all know the technicality as well, that on 31st January, if we did not do this before, we would have lost Mr. Jaishankar as Foreign Secretary, which is not what our government wants to do. And I can't believe this hue and cry. Please look at previous governments as well. In 1987, you had Mr. Rajiv Gandhi and then Mr. Mr. Venkat Eswaram. What was that? I mean, you never questioned a prerogative of a government if it is in national interest.
Let's put that point to Abhishek Singhvi. You raised an important issue. Let's put it to Abhishek Singhvi. What she's referring to, Abhishek Singhvi, is in fact that Congress is in no position to complain because in 87 Rajiv Gandhi sacked AP Venkateshwaran at a press conference, which if anything was an even more unbecoming way of handling a difficult matter.
I think those defending what has happened are missing the point completely. First of all, two wrongs don't make a right. Second, Mr. Rajiv Gandhi drew a lot of criticism for that. Thirdly, the issue, Karan, is on the manner, is what you said. It's the manner. Everything not illegal, not unconstitutional is not proper. Fourthly, and most importantly, you are missing the point altogether, those who defend it, by saying how good Mr. Jaishankar is. I unconditionally and very strongly say so. In fact, I had the pleasure that he did brief me at a point of time on the 1, 2, 3. So, he's a very competent officer. It's not about his competence at all. It's about the issue that in a post like the Foreign Secretary, one of the few posts where a 2-year tenure is supposed to be more or less guaranteed.
Okay.
An area where the person incumbent has done nothing perverse, the person is not incompetent, nothing has happened.
Well,
which
just
is
a moment, I'm afraid I'm going to have to stop you on that point of competence because the Prime Minister clearly believes she doesn't have the competence for the job that she's got. You're putting your opinion of her competence against the Prime Minister's.
Karan,
so let's not assert that as a fact. Let's not assert that as a fact.
Objectively, the FS has done nothing act or omission which is measurable, which is of an egregious crime.
Just a moment. These are not issues that are measured on pieces of paper giving scores 1, 2, 3, 4.
That's why
Sanjay Baru raised his hand. I want to go to you, Mr. Baru. I want to go to you, Mr. Baru, and I want to stick for a moment on the manner in which it's happened. No one disputes that Mr. Jaishankar has unimpeachable credentials. But I want to put something to you. Mr. Modi may well have believed that he was undoing an injustice and a wrong done to Mr. Jaishankar, who, as you pointed out, should have been made Foreign Secretary a year and a half ago. And that may well be the reason why he felt it needs to be done, even if it has to be done brutally. But it's the brutal nature of the sacking, an hour and a half before midnight, and that too, in this way, without finding some other suitable appointment for her. Do you think this is the right decision, but handled badly?
Well, Karan, two things. One, look, I mean, whether she was offered something else or not, one doesn't know, so I can't comment on that. I don't know the facts. But on the issue of morale, let me share something with your viewers this evening. When this issue was being discussed at the time when Ms. Singh was made the Foreign Secretary, I can tell you that several middle-level Foreign Service officers, Joint Secretaries in the Foreign Affairs Ministry, actually came to me. They contacted me, met me, and said that young officers want competent person to be appointed as a Foreign Secretary. Seniority should not be the consideration. In fact, one person said to me, I can tell you who will be the Foreign Secretary for the next 20 years if you only go by seniority, because it's already decided. It's decided on the day people join service. But what is the incentive for people to perform if seniority is only consideration?
Sure.
Experience and merit and performance should be the consideration. And one of those officers actually came to my house and said, will you please go and meet Dr. Manmohan Singh, since you know him, and tell him this, that some of us feel like this. I actually conveyed this to Dr. Singh at that time. Now, the fact is that morale goes up when people in any service see the people they respect being rewarded rather than only seniority being the consideration.
Let
so
me
I don't want to
there.
go into the question of whether yesterday evening was the right time, morning was the right time, midnight was the right time. Governments work 24 hours a day.
I'm not so sure that's a convincing answer to the way it's done, because even though governments work 24 hours a day, the individuals concerned are human beings with a reputation and a sense of respect, and you need to respect them, otherwise they won't respect you. So you don't dismiss people 1 hour before midnight. But let's pick up the point about morale, because Kamal Sibal, you said a moment ago that this could have a damaging impact on the morale of the service. You've just heard Sanjay Baru say that when in fact Sujata Singh was appointed purely on the grounds of seniority, a lot of people came to him to say this is the wrong thing to do, and that people respect the skill of a person and the talent of a person rather than just a seniority claim. So what's your position? Do you really think this will damage morale in the service, or do you agree that perhaps the respect for credibility will be more important?
I'm a bit shocked that Foreign Service officers went to him to plead with him to not make Sujata Singh Foreign Secretary. I think the people who did that were absolutely out of line, and they showed a miserable lack of esprit de corps to try and influence the decision of the government by going to someone in the PMO and lobby against somebody who was being considered for foreign secretaryship. This is simply not on. That is one. The other is that we know from past even so, that's even worse, to try and get pressure on the Prime Minister, thinking that somebody who got good contacts with him reach out to him and give him a particular message. I think this is absolutely wrong. This is playing games. This is playing politics, and this is absolutely wrong.
There was concern.
No. This is just not wrong, because those people were not competing for the foreign secretary's job. And if they had some personal axe to grind against Sujata Singh, that's a different matter, and that's what probably motivated them. But that is one aspect of it. The other is that the dismissal of the head of the Foreign Service, even if it is justified on certain considerations, is bound to raise controversy, because it creates a sense of insecurity. And also the fact that you are giving a 2-year fixed tenure, at the end of it, it remains very uncertain, because at any time it can be curtailed. So I think we need to review very closely the whole system of selection of the Foreign Secretary. Remember, Sujata Singh was in the service for 36, 37 years. She has had important diplomatic postings. She was ambassador to Australia, to Germany. So if she was that incompetence should have been revealed even earlier, and that should have been a reason not to make a Foreign Secretary. Now I agree that Jaishankar is a very competent officer, and maybe in comparison he is professionally got much sounder experience, and one can expect much more from him. That's a different matter. So I am not at all pronouncing on the merits of the case, but certainly there is an element of controversy if you dismiss the Foreign Secretary in this manner. And one last point. The question of giving us some other job by curtailing a tenure actually means you're asking a Chief of Army Staff to become a Corps Commander somewhere. After retirement you can give something because the person's tenure is finished. But midway, while she's in her tenure, to offer her something else is not something that any self-respecting Foreign Secretary will accept.
That's a very good point that you've made. Abhishek Singhvi, you raised earlier the question of competence. Now, if the Prime Minister actually does believe that the person he has as Foreign Secretary is not up to the job, or worse, he deems the person to be incompetent, surely, I put it to you, he has not just a right, but perhaps a duty to remove her. And it's no great secret that this Prime Minister had formed a very adverse opinion of the Foreign Secretary over the last 7 months.
Well, firstly, Karan, there is no objective evidence to justify that opinion if that opinion exists. We don't know what opinion he had formed, but if you say so, let's accept it. There is no act or omission of an egregious kind by the incumbent Foreign Secretary.
Would you be made aware of it?
This repeated example.
Just a moment, would you have been made aware of a specific instance where the Prime Minister felt the Foreign Secretary was incompetent? Surely he would not publicize that to the world out of respect for the lady concerned.
Then how do you assume? Well, Karan, then in that case what you are saying is that every Prime Minister is entitled to a completely subjective, completely arbitrary view and curtail a Foreign Secretary. There must be some objective act or omission by the incumbent to justify it. I'm not saying it's reviewable by courts, but there must be something visible. Otherwise, just because I don't like you, I sack you. But second point is more important, Karan. This example repeatedly being given that you must encourage younger people and not go by seniority, even if it applies to a supersession like Mr. Menon did. It's a different issue because you are appointing someone. Here you are removing an incumbent. That's a vital distinction. Removing an incumbent midway with a fixity of tenure for only a few secretaries of the government of India.
Venkateshwaran was removed midway.
Is vastly different.
Venkateshwaran was removed midway at a press conference.
Why are you giving that again example, Karan? I said two wrongs don't make a right. Mr. Rajiv Gandhi came in for a lot of flack on the manner of
and Mr. Modi is coming in for flack tonight.
Nobody is questioning the Prime Minister's prerogative. Yes, therefore two wrongs don't make a right. Perhaps it could be done differently, but we are discussing not a tutu matter of who did what.
I'll come to the moment.
Whether we should have done this kind of thing in a different way. Okay. And today, appointing a younger person de novo is vastly different from curtailing your tenure midway.
Well, just a moment, if you're going to appoint a younger person, then you have to curtail the tenure of the person who's got the job. You can't have her there while you have another man as Foreign Secretary. The two have to happen simultaneously. Shaina NC, let me put this to you. All the newspaper reports today suggest that Sushma Swaraj was keen that, in fact, Sujata Singh should be permitted to complete her tenure. Mr. Modi clearly disagreed. Has this episode now additionally also revealed a difference of opinion, perhaps a fairly important difference of opinion between the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister?
I would not go by any of these speculative reports, and please let me say that there is the prerogative of the Prime Minister. The Foreign Secretary today, unlike previous governments where relationship building with countries at large was not even viewed as a priority, today is an extremely important post. To have somebody who is competent and based on merit, despite age, I think the more important signal going out to officers at large is that if your performance is exemplary, you will be rewarded. And in Mr. Jaishankar's case, everyone knows that this had to happen before 31st of January. Now, if this decision takes place at 10 at the night or 10 in the morning, I don't even think that's an area of concern. Unlike previous governments who choose to show it off at a press conference in 1987, we have shown that yes, Mr. Jaishankar has had relations with the United States of America, extremely positive positive vis-a-vis the nuclear deal, has had a fabulous track record in China, Russia, his knowledge on the subject, and we are a government that gives an opportunity to a competent officer who has shown purely based on merit. And if we go into listening to Mr. Singhvi's argument to suggest that the Prime Minister must highlight why he has taken this decision, trust me, we'd be just another government that is doing no work and only doing this constant dialogue and appeasement, which is not required. We believe in action, and it has to happen in this fashion.
Let's keep the answer short, Shaina. I take your point. That's a very good one that you've made, that the Prime Minister can't be explaining everything all the time to the public. Let me put something to you, Sanjay Baru. We don't know, but sources are revealing, and I assume those sources know what they're talking about because that's the only information we have, that in fact offers were made to Sujata Singh of other ambassadorial posts. I take on board Kamal Sibal's point that this is like removing the army chief and trying to make him a corps commander or an army commander, but that apart, an attempt was made to find some more graceful way of removing her from the top job, but she put her foot down and insisted on completing her tenure. So the question I want to put to you is this: did her stubbornness or her insistence, if I can so phrase it, to continue end up creating an unavoidable messy situation? Whereas if she'd accepted some other offer, a more gracious handing over between her and Jaishankar could have been possible.
Well, that's her prerogative, Karan. I mean, frankly, if she doesn't want another job after retirement, she has every right to say, thank you very much. If the government does not if I don't enjoy the confidence of the Prime Minister, I'd rather not work in the government. That's her prerogative. And I don't think there's anything graceless about doing it at 10:30 in the night. As Saina has said, the decision had to be taken before the 31st of January, and the decision was taken. And I guess she took the view that since the Prime Minister was not satisfied with her, she'd rather go home than accept some other job.
You know, Kamal Sibal, when AP Venkateswaran was sacked, the Foreign Service Association passed a resolution supporting him and criticizing Rajiv Gandhi and the government for the way the Foreign Secretary had been treated. Is there a possibility that something similar might happen in this case?
No. I think for two reasons. One is that Jaishankar is the senior most after Sujata Singh. So he's not superseding anybody, and therefore there is no bitterness on the minds of some others who might feel that their career prospects have been jeopardized. And number two, as I said, his merit and his competence are recognized, and there is no feeling that it was a purely political decision or a political favor. It was just that the situation became so difficult because the present Foreign Secretary lost the confidence of the Prime Minister. She had to be changed, and there was no other way of doing it but to accommodate Jaishankar in the manner he has been. And I think, as I said earlier, the government knew that there would be some controversy, but they feel on the whole they would be able to, deal with the controversy as best as possible and carry on.
Very quickly, Abhishek Singhvi, you don't deny for a moment that Jaishankar richly deserves to be Foreign Secretary. His track record, both in terms of the Indo-US nuclear deal, in China when he was ambassador and sorted out with clinical efficiency the Depsang incursion, the fact that in just 1 year in America, not only did he sort out the Cobra Garde affair, but also more importantly, he handled 2 critical summits. All of that is part of the reason why he deserves to be. How far does your party intend, therefore, to take this controversy?
No, I think there's no question of a party taking a controversy, because this is not a matter on which a political party will fight, in the sense that it's a prerogative ultimately of changing the bureaucracy. The individual concerned is entitled to take if there had been any illegality or statutory violation. It's not for a party to take it up in that sense, but the party, and through the media programs like this, will air its view that the issue is not at all about the successor's competence. That's the wrong test. Dr. Jaishankar is outstanding, but I dare say that person 1 year junior to him, if you check the entire India, may be equally or even better than him. That can't be the test unless the incumbent, who's already serving, has done something which the foreign minister would have thought egregious, which the country would have seen as egregious. Nobody is talking of the Prime Minister filing an affidavit justifying his decision. But certainly, there cannot be a power in the absolute that the Prime Minister just doesn't like the chemistry with somebody and removes. He can do it, but that's why it's called improper, highly improper.
I take your point. We're going to stop there, but very quickly, Shahnazzi, I want you to answer one simple question. And the question is this. No one denies the Prime Minister's prerogative and right to change top officials. But when you change someone like the Foreign Secretary, to owe an explanation why you're doing it so that people feel you had good grounds for doing it and it wasn't arbitrary. Would you accept that an explanation would help the Prime Minister and it would remove some of the embarrassment?
Can I come in on this, Karan?
Sorry, you want to come in on that? Okay, very quickly, Shaina.
I think it's the prerogative completely of the government, and 2 years down when we debate the performance of the Foreign Secretary in tandem with the government and where our country is heading towards relationships across the globe, I don't think this would be a debate to talk about. The only debate at that point would be what a good decision this was.
All right, but you're repeating yourself, so I'm going to stop you. You've made that point earlier. You wanted the last word in 10 seconds. Please make it, Sanjay Baru.
Well, so Karan, this issue came up when Jaishankar Menon was made Foreign Secretary. 17 officers were superseded, and some of them actually went to the Central Administrative Tribunal. They complained to the tribunal that due procedure was not followed, that their claims were not entertained, etc., etc., etc. And what did the tribunal say at that time? It's the prerogative of the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister has every right to pick and choose. So the matter was closed. I mean, 17 officers were superseded when Jaishankar Menon was made Foreign Secretary. But the official view was that's the prerogative of the Prime Minister.
All right, I take your point, and there's also another English metaphor that comes to my mind. You can't make an omelette without breaking eggs. That's an absolute truth. The problem is, what happens if you're the egg? It looks very different when you're the egg. My thanks to all my guests for joining me.